The Alexei Kolosov.
Kolosaga.
Yeah, the Kolosov continues. We got a little bit of reporting over the weekend and today from Anthony DeMarco, basically telling us what we knew.
I mean, the thing is, and I'm not saying these reports are bad. It's just there's not much new.
No.
It's basically just saying that the Flyers are assuming that he's not going to show up, probably based on the conversations that Danny Briere had with Milstein and Kolosov. They're operating the assumption that Kolosov isn't coming. Presumably, someone coming from Belarus would have to deal with a fair amount of logistics if he was going to show up for rookie camp, which is the expectation. He is indeed a rookie. He would be expected to come to rookie camp, which begins on Wednesday. And if he hasn't bought a ticket yet and has no place to live and has done anything like that, Janzari probably ain't coming.
Maybe he really liked the hotel and he wants to go back to the hotel, Charlie. But yeah, it was September 6th. So what was that? Friday. DeMarco tweeted, "I'm told Alexei Kolosov has begun practicing with Minsk. What the player in his camp do next will certainly be interesting. Stick Taps, the Hockey News Hub, helped me track this development down." And then this morning, he tweeted, I just had it in front of me. Oh, it's on the screen. Well done. You're the best, Bryn. While it is not officially confirmed, the expectation is that Alexei Kolosov will not be reporting to Philly training camp. In the event of this assumption is that the contract will be told, similar to Ivan Fedotov's 2 years ago. And that's where I kind of wanted to start with this is...
Okay.
The tolling of the contract, whatever is to happen. If they loan him, they toll the contract, whatever.
Well, before we get into that, let me just explain to people people who don't know what tolling is.
Right.
Basically, what tolling the contract means is that right now, Alexei Kolosov has 2 years left on his entry-level contract. Last year was the first year. The Flyers loaned him back to the KHL, back to Dynamo Minsk. That was planned. So that first year, the ELC was burned. If you toll a contract, essentially what it means is that the player did not show up. The player did not adhere to the terms of the contract. He did not report. He didn't show up for work. But that doesn't mean that year 2 of the entry-level contract just gets burned because he never actually fulfilled the terms of the contract. So what happens is basically just gets pushed back a year. And technically, if Kolosov does not ever show up this season, or there isn't some sort of agreement, mutual termination, something like that the two sides agree to, technically, this year just never happened. And year 2 of his entry-level contract, in theory, would be the 2025-2026 season instead of the 2024-2025 season. And it just kind of keeps getting pushed back. I think that's interesting background because we use words like told, assuming everyone knows what they are. And we're going to be talking about it for the next 20 minutes probably. So I want to make sure everyone actually understands what that means.
That's good because we talked about it with Fedotov whenever, but more people are watching listening than whatever the hell we talked about.
We want to keep growing that audience.
Probably on Broad Street Hockey 2 years ago or whenever it was with when this all went down with Ivan Fedotov. But that is where the difference begins to me. Whether he's under contract. That's the difference between he and Cutter Gauthier.
It's a big difference.
And that's huge.
It's a very big difference.
Cutter was like, I'll just stay in school, never sign, and then you lose me for nothing, so trade me now.
They would have gotten a second-round comp pick.
They would have got the 7th pick in the second round. Yeah. Cool.
That's great. Not the best.
The 5th pick, I guess. In the second round. That does nothing for you when it's up until the day they drafted Matvei Michkov. He is the number 1 prospect without much of a challenge, quite honestly.
Right.
You lose him for, quite honestly, nothing. Alexei Kolosov, whether they come to an agreement, he shows up, I guess in this event, not showing up. But they come to an agreement. They loan him. The contract is okay. It's another year burned of the ELC. Or they told the contract and say, show up or you're never going to play in the NHL.
Yeah, we have your NHL rights. We have your NHL rights in perpetuity.
Yeah,
I was going to say that exact same word.
We have this forever.
Yep.
It's ours.
Yep.
There's guys who's like, if Eric Gustafsson ever wanted to come back, he'd have to come back to the Flyers or be traded. Original Eric Gustafsson.
No, I know what you're talking about. And it is because I've had some people ask me that. Won't the Flyers ultimately just terminate the deal if he just never shows up? And the thing is that are there scenarios where maybe the Flyers are incentivized in some way or another to just say, fine, we're done with the Alexei Kolosov experience? Yeah, it's possible. I can't rule out entirely that it's all ends someday with Kolosov getting his contract terminated. But look at this from the Flyers' perspective. What's like the worst case scenario for the Flyers in this situation? The worst case scenario is he refuses to come over to play for the Flyers. They say, and then he tells them, he swears up and down, I just want to stay in the KHL my whole career. You know, I never want to come over and play in North America. I want to stay home. I just don't want to have this hanging over my head. And the Flyers like, okay, fine, we'll terminate the deal. You're good. And then a year later, he changes his mind, signs with the Rangers, and becomes their next star goalie. That would be the worst case scenario, where then it's not just you lost this theoretical concept, but he never came over and helped anybody. If they terminate the deal, Kolosov could theoretically sign with anybody.
Yeah.
And then if he's real good for another team, the Flyers have to spend the next decade watching him be real good for another team. Whereas if they just keep tolling the contract, yes, the KHL ultimately may not care, and maybe sometime down the road they decide to, disregard agreements with the NHL and things like that, because it's a very weird situation all around, given, the fact that they're not allowed to be in international play. The memorandum of understanding has been torn up between the KHL and the NHL, so it's all very weird. But imagine a scenario where they tear up the contract, Kolosov shows up and becomes a great goalie for 10 years for the Minnesota Wild. And that's the reminder he's a glaring example of the Flyers messing this up. Whereas at least if they keep the contract, there's no way another NHL team is going to be, because yes, the KHL might not care, but Gary Bettman in the NHL will. If he's under contract, if he has an NHL entry-level contract with the Flyers that is theoretically still in existence, the NHL is not going to approve Kolosov signing with another NHL team. No. That is out of the question. So the tolling is honestly just as much to prevent Kolosov from going off and signing with another NHL team and really screwing over the Flyers as it is to keep his rights.
You cannot allow that to happen.
Yeah.
Because this is what will happen. The Flyers Ducks 2029 Stanley Cup Final, Alexei Kolosov in net.
Yeah.
Like that is what would happen.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
It just seems very Flyers.
It would just be, that's what's going to happen, man. But no, it's you maintain his rights. They don't have to do anything. And as we saw with Fedotov, the KHL, like you just said, they don't care. They said with Fedotov, we don't recognize tolling of contracts. Like, he's ours. Good luck. Like, that is basically what the KHL said to the Flyers.
It is true, but by the same token, they did ultimately figure that. Like, Fedotov did come over.
Yes.
The Flyers were very obviously involved in secretive, clandestine negotiations with the Russian oligarchs and everyone trying to figure that out. And they ultimately came to a resolution. So the reason why this is fascinating, and again, we're still, I guess, 2 days away from the players actually showing up for rookie camp, 3 days away from them first hitting the ice. So we'll see. Maybe Kolosov pulls a fast one on everyone and will show up, and then suddenly he's just going to be like, "Nah, I don't know where all this crap came from. I was always coming." Just telling you guys.
That would be hilarious.
That would be so funny. But operating under the assumption that Kolosov is not going to show up for rookie camp, and then presumably will not show up for main camp, it's going to be really fascinating to see where this one goes, because what you said is true. He really doesn't have a lot of leverage here, aside from convincing another KHL team to go to war with the NHL and the IAHF, just like the way that CSKA went to war over Fedotov. Will Minsk do it? Maybe, but here's the thing. They have all their goalies.
They just signed another one.
They have 3 goalies under contract. Now, that's not necessarily going to stop them. I'm sure they could find a way out of it if they really wanted to, but they've clearly been preparing for a world without Alexei Kolosov too. Yeah. So I don't know if it's a certainty that Kolosov will get signed by a KHL team that wants to go through the battle that Fedotov's team went through with the NHL, with the IAHF, with the KHL, with everything. So if he's not playing in the KHL and he won't come over to play in the NHL, what's he going to do?
Is he going to just go?
He's just going to sit there and
go get
practice?
a job?
I'm not sure. I understand, and maybe we'll get into this today. Maybe we can get into this later in the week, when we start to come to determinations on who messed this up. let's set that aside for a second. And let's just say that like Kolosov's hockey career is in the balance here. And I understand why the Flyers are basically saying to him, at least to this point, you signed a contract, dude. You can't play for anybody else. So if you want to play professional hockey without starting up a big old incident, you got to play for us, and we ain't going to loan you. We're not going to terminate the deal. To this point, we're not going to trade you. And if your whole thing is you want to stay over there, who in the NHL would want you? Because you don't want to come over. So why would they trade for you just to loan you out and pay your salary for you to play in Europe again?
You're 22. You've played 3 AHL games, maybe? Is it 2? Like, no one's guaranteeing you NHL time. That no one's seen you. Like, I don't understand what he thinks his options are unless he's like, I am just going to be a career KHLer.
But again, if he wants to be a career KHLer, if he wants to be a career KHLer, then he has to find a team that is willing to go through the battle that Fedotov's team went through to keep him over there. And he's not even like. And somebody in the comment section pointed this out, and this is a very fair point. Fedotov won Russia silver medal and then led his team to the Stanley Cup of the KHL. There was a much bigger incentive to fight a war with the IAHF over Fedotov, who was an established elite KHL goalie. Like, Kolosov is a decent young goalie in the KHL. He's not a star. He's a cool prospect. But he's not a guy who necessarily everyone's going to be trying to bang their agent's door down to sign. I'm really fascinated to see how this is going to play out, because if he doesn't show up to camp, this basically then becomes a staring contest.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the Flyers are wrong to think that Kolosov's ultimately going to be the one who blinks first.
It depends, like you said, on like another team wanting to go through all that. And even with like Fedotov individually. Like, obviously, right now, Russia banned from IIHF competition, so it's not a major concern.
But they want to be unbanned at some point.
They want to be unbanned.
Yes,
and
that's the key.
You would think, like, the Russians love playing for Russia.
Yeah.
Fedotov can't. Like, if
he's not allowed.
If Russia was just allowed back in tomorrow, he's suspended for like 2 years from he individually from international competition because he violated like the terms of whatever the memorandum of understanding by staying over and signing a contract with the team, even though he was under contract. So like he individually is banned. Yeah. That you would assume happen to Kolosov as well if he were to find a team willing to jump through all these hoops.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit different, I guess, because technically Kolosov is not Russian, he's Belarusian.
Right.
But there's a reason why Belarus has been subject to a lot of the same sanctions, because Belarus and Russia are pretty tightly tied.
The same place.
I mean, it's not, but like Belarus is a very strong ally of Russia to the point where, I mean, it's very close. Let's put it that way. So there's a lot going on here. I'm just saying that if he doesn't show up, this is going to more or less turn into a staring contest. Now, maybe the two sides find a way to resolve it. Maybe there is an NHL team that is interested in trading for Kolosov, and they talk to Kolosov, and Kolosov tells them, I'll come over if I'm traded to Nashville or something. And then they work something out. The Flyers get a mid to late round pick, and they wash their hands of the situation, and it's like, okay, but I don't think they're going to terminate the deal. I don't think they're going to agree to a loan. So if they're not going to do one of those two things, I don't know what Kolosov can do other than try to convince a KHL team to go to war for him. It's going to be interesting.
I wonder. Now, like you said, we'll get into maybe once it's actually he's not here, anyone gets a chance to actually talk to Danny, talk to Jones, whoever, figure out who's actually at fault here. But this does kind of seem like a Kolosov problem as much as, listen, this is a bad look for the organization. It just is.
Yeah, it is.
Coming on the heels of the Cutter Gauthier situation. Yeah. Having this happen twice to two of your top prospects looks bad for the organization, regardless of whose fault it actually is. Because of that, do you think it's best for the Flyers to just go, sorry, man, tolling the contract, you're ours. This is a you problem. Come over, or we have your rights in perpetuity. And you never even get, like, you don't even get to the point of, all right, ELC's over, time to start making some real money. And like, it's not as if that's BS money, but it's not millions of dollars like Fedotov is making now, you know?
Sure.
You're not going to get to that point. Good luck. Figure out your career. Or do you go, all right, man, let's kick the can one more time. Because of this perception, like, we just don't want to go to war with another top prospect of ours. We're going to loan you another year, and let's talk in March.
I would be surprised.
You would be surprised if they agreed to a loan?
I would be surprised if at this point they cave. Because that would be, loaning Kolosov at this point would be very publicly caving to a prospect who, and we rank Kolosov in our top 10. He's a good prospect. He's not a great prospect. And
there's a reason the Flyers goalies aren't like, their goalie prospects aren't thought like, the Flyers like what they have.
Yeah, they do.
But nationally, the thought isn't, oh, you know who has a stockpile of goalies is the Flyers, man. They got 3 guys who are like, it's like, oh yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, they got intriguing guys, but not necessarily guys that everyone around the league loves. I don't know if the Flyers want to set the precedent that they cave to their prospects. And this is a situation, you pointed out the Gauthier comparison, and obviously it's an understandable comparison. You got 2 guys, 2, well-known prospects who ain't coming. Who have, well, in some way form. But you two prospects that have ended up in situations where they've had a dispute with the organization.
Yes.
That's fair. But as you noted, the key difference is that Gauthier never signed a contract. And that in part was because of the college thing. I suspect that if he had gone the CHL route where you can sign a contract right after being drafted, he probably would have signed into that contract. And then if he would have had his change of heart, he also would have been under an ELC. And then it's like, well, tough shit, dude. You signed a contract. But he didn't. He went the college route. You can't sign a contract until you're ready to leave college. So they didn't have him under contract for when he made his change of heart. Kolosov's under contract. He, at one point, did indeed say, I want to be part of the Philadelphia Flyers organization, and then put his name on a piece of paper to confirm that. And that does change the game a bit in terms of, like, the Flyers with Gauthier, they didn't have the leverage. Their leverage, I guess, would have been calling his bluff and saying, you're not going to be willing to play 4 years of college. You're eventually going to change your mind because you don't want to take the injury risk and you want your money. Fair. That would have been their bet. But that's a lot less leverage than telling a guy like, you signed a contract, you can only play for us. Like, either play for us or you don't play. That is a lot more leverage than anything they ever had over Gauthier.
I understand all that, and I do think they probably shouldn't cave. But because of this like, Gauthier was what it was, whatever the hell happened, it's not good. Like, if he's just an immature kid, didn't get the carpet rolled out for him maybe the way he wanted, that happened. Then we have the visual of the GM and the president carrying Matvei Michkov's stuff through the airport, carrying his bags and sticks for him, you know? Like, that happened. Yeah. And then, like, they're doing everything they possibly can for this one guy. And granted, maybe the best prospect in hockey right now. A top 5 prospect for sure.
Top 5 at least, yeah.
Like, without a doubt. Yeah. But Kolosov's sitting there like, you just kind of left me alone in a hotel. Like, because of the perception that maybe they're not doing right by some of their prospects, do you think that could be pressure to cave?
No, I really don't. Because if the Flyers will make the case that they did do right by him. That the story, the narrative of they left him alone in a hotel room was always dramatically overblown. That what we did for him during that 6-week period where he was here is no different than what pretty much every other team does for, young prospects getting an early taste of North America. No, I really don't think that they are going to be scared of how this is perceived. I really don't. Because, there will be some corners of the fan base that will take it in the darkest direction, but I don't think they're terribly concerned that it's going to be a black mark on the organization as a whole. I just don't think they're going to. I don't think that's something they're going to be that concerned about.
It sounds, Charlie, like the Flyers are pretty chill about this.
I mean, I don't think they're chill, but I don't think they're as agitated as some fans are. Put it that way.
Well, there's very few people as agitated as some Flyers fans.
Fair point.
Maybe Eagles fans.
We all silly like the mayor.